thing I want to kind of conclude on before I turn over to David is that what we have here is we actually have fraud that we can prove in this election. There was fraud in Georgia's election. We can prove it with data. And because we can prove it with data, the voting will of the people of Georgia is not reflected in what was certified by the Secretary of State.
Well, party people, you just heard it for yourself.
A data scientist with over a decade of experience working directly with structured and unstructured data across a number of industries. The analysis we're going to be reviewing is purely scientific and not based on any political affiliation of red, blue, left, or right. Based on our extensive analysis across precinct, county, and state voting results, we've identified over 40 data points where negative voting or outright vote switching across candidates has totaled over 200,000 votes. Separately, we've applied machine learning algorithms that are regularly used for anomaly detection of fraud in financial services that flagged over 500 precincts with over 1 million corresponding votes that exhibited suspicious activity. So what's important to note here is that in alignment with standard fraud investigations, we've applied a rigorous, systematic, and sophisticated process that has consistently identified data points that other industries, including financial services, would label as suspicious activity or definitively declare fraudulent. So I'll pause and with this in mind, I want to make this a little bit more relatable. And if you can take a moment just to think about how your online banking experience works. You probably have a checking, savings, and credit card account all on a single screen. Your online banking is designed so that built into this website interface is a back-end connection to a database. And this will store all of your balances, including your deposits or withdrawals. So you can review your statement each month or in real time confirm that the transactions you made are accurate and true. So imagine now you logged into your account on November 5th and you noticed that there were something to the magnitude of 50 transfers across your accounts. Let's say you even deposited a few checks on the 3rd and 4th, and you would expect to see these transactions for each of the individual amounts you deposited. Now, instead, imagine your activity reflects these deposits going into your account, then being switched to a checking account, sometimes as an exact dollar amount, and other times being broken apart into slices and switched intermittently across different slice magnitudes. Now, this is obviously strange in itself and deeply concerning from a data integrity standpoint. Now, also imagine that some of these deductions are sent externally, and so the money is leaving your account entirely. You can see the exact amount that it's deducted and where it was sent that you did not authorize. So this is what we have identified within the voting system data that has been confirmed to align with the Secretary of State data that's used to certify these election results. The data is freely available to the public, but does require some advanced programming skills to extract, parse, and join these data sets in order to bring these types of insights to light. We're part of an independent team that has, in the spirit of transparency, made all of our analysis, programs, and data public so anyone can independently replicate. We've also put out a series of videos that help translate some of our more complicated analysis, which we're going to play here, that will help reinforce the message and maybe a different point of view that will help make these concepts more digestible.
Receiving over 90% in a precinct is a marker for fraud. In Fulton County alone, we can see that more than 150 precincts voted 90% or more for Biden. In the statewide race that was decided by less than 13,000 votes, these 150 Fulton precincts alone accounted for 152,000 Biden votes. This is a clear indicator of suspicious or outright fraudulent activity.
We've scanned 113,130 as of moments ago. We've adjudicated 106,000 plus of those.
Adjudication, the process of reviewing a ballot that may have been flagged during the ballot scanning process.
The only ballots that are adjudicated are if we have a ballot with a contest on it in which there's some question as to how the computer reads it. So the vote review panel then determines voter intent.
In 94 precincts in DeKalb County, it is statistically impossible to have 9 out of 10 voters voting for Joe Biden.
We've just seen a few examples of statistical irregularities and impossibilities. Now, we'll take a closer look at some vote manipulation within the election database, including explicit vote count switching from one candidate to another. You can see in Dodge County, there's a lot of strange activity going on. The left side of the screen shows incremental votes as they were were reported for both election day and absentee. On the right, we can see the total vote counts, which should only be incremental, moving as the county reported in real time. Again, here we're focusing only on Donald Trump's votes. So this wouldn't necessarily be captured at the state totals as they're reported on TV, since one county's deduction in votes can be offset by another county's reporting of equal or greater votes. The first question you're going to want to ask, or already have asked, is why are any bars going negative? And the answer is they shouldn't. Unbeknownst to the general public, votes for Donald Trump were being switched and removed from his total, which often coincided with other precinct updates that simultaneously offset deductions so that they appeared to remain neutral to outside observers. Across the three counties of Dodge, Daughtry, and Putnam, Trump has over 30,000 votes that simply disappear. Here, we have clear visibility of an event that occurred at the county level as we compare two data sources. In this case, Donald Trump reported 29,391 votes at 9/11 local time in Bibb County, Georgia. Simultaneously, Joe Biden was reported to have 17,218 votes. Minutes later, at the next reported time update from the precinct data sources, Donald Trump is reported to have 17,218 votes, and Biden now has 29,391 votes. A clear and exact switch of vote totals between candidates. Because there is a time lag between each state recorded aggregation of county results, this type of switch can go undetected in state reporting, as long as it falls after the latest state refresh and before the next state update.
According to the Georgia Secretary of State website, Trump lost by 12,670 votes. As you saw earlier in this video, far more than that were taken from President Trump. In statistics, an anomaly or outlier is an observation or event that deviates so much from other events that it arouses suspicions in its generation. In this, an isolation forest is defined as a specialized learning algorithm for anomaly detection that works to the principle of isolating these outliers and flagging them for potential review. Remember these graphs when you meet your government officials in person. The burden of proof is on the system to prove our elections were fair, and not the people.
Okay, so here's how your vote is counted in Georgia using Fulton County's process as an example. So after you check in at a poll pad to vote on election day, you go to an ImageCast precinct terminal. After you cast your vote, a ballot image is saved on the machine. And after all the polls close, the SD cards containing all the ballot images are removed from the terminals and transported by car to, in Fulton County, one of 4 drop-off locations. Then it's transferred by police escort to the 1365 English Street warehouse. Inside of there, it is run through a tabulation software called Democracy Suite, which counts the ballots and exports the totals to a Dominion server that inserts those totals into a SQL Server database. From that point, it's directly transmitted to the CITL election night reporting server. The election night reporting server is responsible for transmitting the totals to the Secretary of State for output to their website, and data aggregators like Edison, who then transmit that data to the networks.
As you just saw, there's a standard process for transferring votes by memory card from precinct to county vote aggregators. Now, let's focus specifically on this square box detailing the data entry process for county updates. The following options are available to anyone with access to these computers working in the election software: updating vote batches, rejecting vote batches, and even more notable, generating new or temporary batches that can be injected directly into the vote tally. Each of these options can then be validated and published into the system. Again, anyone working in the election software at this point has the power to manipulate large batches of votes. And all of this is before the data is even uploaded to the server.
This whole process is a machine to machine to machine transfer for all intents and purposes, using humans as a medium, but at the same time, you're not having people enter, for instance, into a spreadsheet, these totals. Because you're not having people enter these totals into a spreadsheet, that removes the entire layer and the entire argument for any kind of human entry error, because there's no human being entering anything anywhere in here. You can't show me a place where a human being enters stuff in here. Now, if there were a human being entering something in there, then that would point to a type of fraud or fraud aspect of this whole thing. So the point is that our data that's showing these negative drops is coming from a machine to machine to machine source. There's no reason that at any point something should be subtracted. And I want to make that very, very clear, that at no point in an incremental process should you decrement. Dave?
Are there any questions? No. Sorry.
To add to that too, I wanted to highlight just very quickly. I know we're short on time, but we mentioned the RTR software options in the video, and what's important here is that this is built into the software itself, so that when anyone logs into their Windows or Apple machines, you have a certain set of maybe you have parental controls on there for children, but in this particular case, there's no overarching controls, and this type of flexibility of options you see here on that 1 through 4 is available. So there's this situation where new batches can be recreated, you can reject, which is outside of this typical chain of sequence within this network diagram where votes should go in at the polling locations. Votes should be counted at the absentee counting locations and through SD cards, and only in extreme situations, if there was an adjudication, are those processes should they be altered. And the fact that this exists anywhere within this sort of sequential supply is a vulnerability in the overall system. So this is here to identify that vulnerability exists, and also to reinforce the fact that what we had seen in our data analysis of votes going negative should be outside of that process, and also should not exist, because we are thinking about a machine talking to a machine talking to a machine. And a machine, unless it's explicitly programmed to decrement, should not decrement, especially in a voting situation. Similar as the way you deposit money into a bank account, you mentioned earlier, votes, no different. You only are adding here. And if there's a removal, there needs to be a very good explanation as to why. And that has not been provided, and simply nor is it consistent with how the data is structured and what we've seen in our analysis as to any part of the process that would be consistent with normal or routine legal voting.
Are there any questions?
Can I make one brief, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
one brief note?
Yes.
Just as a point of reference in layman's terms, please understand that the data that your Secretary of State's office is certifying with is the same data that shows these negative decrements, is the same data that they are receiving, is what the New York Times is reporting, is what the networks are reporting. So either the Secretary of State's office is recording and certifying results that have negative errors and fraudulent votes in them, or someone is giving them negative information. We're not here to point fingers. We're just here to tell you that the certification of votes and the votes that were submitted for the state of Georgia have negative swings in them and have decrements in them. And these are errors, and they are not representative for the state of Georgia and how the state of Georgia's voters voted.
And guys, this is exactly why they had to manufacture an insurrection on January the 6th, because this is the information, this is the evidence, the data that those senators who had pledged not to certify the election was going to hear, that was going to confirm why they should not certify the election. And as you just heard those analysts say, what was certified by the Secretary of State was fraudulent through and through, and he knew it. And you're going to also hear further testimony from a poll worker to that effect, as well as more data evidence. To view the additional evidence that I just referred here, the lady testifying in addition to other evidence, you would need to see my longer video either on my YouTube here or on my Rumble. And basically that video has all of the clips, but again, it was real long, so I'm attempting to shorten it here because I know people's attention spans are short, but I wanted to create a shorter video compiling the data evidence. This is the most compelling and most indisputable evidence, and I wanted it in one place so that people could see it without a lot of my commentary. But as I just said, this is the reason, guys, that there was a J6 event. It was planned so that the senators who had pledged to not certify the election, because they knew that there was rumors and all of this testimony going on and they needed to investigate, Trump was planning to present this evidence on J6. That is why the MAGA folks showed up. That is why he called them there, because that was the plan. And in my original video, you see that documentation of that was the original intent. Everything that we've been told about J6, about MAGA supporters, are lies at worst and exaggerations at best. And it would behoove all of the listeners to learn what America First and MAGA means before you adopt these false narratives. But they had to get those senators out of the building, and they created a chaotic event, and then they blamed it on MAGA supporters. And if you think that that is a conspiracy and if that is not possible, then I'm going to invite you to do some more digging and learn about political manipulation. Okay, start researching communist countries and what goes on there. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Your point is that if every vote counts, and we're seeing vote swings where there are changes, whether it's one vote, 30,000 votes, 200,000 votes, at what point do you as legislators, as elected officials of your people, start to raise the question, why are my people not being represented? Why are my voters' votes not counting?
All right, guys, so we've just heard from the set of data analysts who had proof, unequivocal. Dude said there was fraud and it was significant. We're talking over 200,000 votes. They clocked the switch. They told us how that the machines are programmed to be able to switch votes at the whim of whomever. They clocked that, got it documented. The Georgia state senators here saw all of this stuff December 30th, 2020. And we went on to have a runoff that was fraudulent, as evidenced by the next clip I'm going to show you of the white hackers who actually broke into the Dominion machines during the runoff early voting sessions that was happening that day.
And the committee members, I respectfully request that you afford just a couple of minutes to Javon Pulitzer. He's just informed me of some very serious new evidence that he's just obtained from a Fulton County voting polling place within the last hour, and I think this committee needs to hear this.
Okay, we'll give, can you do it just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes?
So as we all know, there's multiple teams working on this, and our technology team's into it. And as was broke early in the week and last week about connected devices, at this very moment at a polling location in the county, not only do we now have access through the devices to the poll pad, the system, but we are in. And it's not supposed to have Wi-Fi, and that's not supposed to be able to happen. So we've documented now. It's communicating two ways in real time, meaning it's receiving data and sending data. Should never happen, shouldn't be Wi-Fi. We've now documented it in real time so we can suck down the data. But that's going on right there where everybody's voting. And I just wanted to get it into the record.
Now, these are the white hat hackers who are basically corroborating what we just heard from the data analysts about how vulnerable these Dominion voting machines are. So to prove that they are vulnerable and that people can hack into them and they have all these capabilities to switch votes and all of that stuff, they proved it by hiring some white hackers to go in and do it. This is December 30th, 2020, during the early voting for the Senate runoff election between Warnock and Kelly Loeffler, I believe, right? Early voting was going on that day during the hearing, and they clocked it real time just now, as you just saw. And the gentleman came to report that to get it in the record. Okay, again, where's the sheriff? This is Fulton County, Georgia, on December 30th, 2020.
This is, of course, that story that we just heard from this woman, this witness, testifying about people showing up with handcuffs to take people in. And that's that video specifically. So look, here's a little bit more about the Dominion voting systems and the adjudication process. This is kind of short. I'm going to play this. This will show how easy it is to take these Dominion votes and just flip them right over to any other candidate.
No, wait just a minute. I want to go and I think I want to vote for Jason Shaw. They didn't vote that ballot a while ago. There wasn't nothing there. I think we need to vote for him. And I'm going to complete it.
I love her accent. That's so
Confirm
cute.
ballot, save, move to next ballot. Okay. So it pulls up the next ballot that needs to be adjudicated.
So you made a vote for someone where someone did not vote.
I did, didn't I?
And you're the election supervisor?
I'm the election supervisor.
Wow.
I am the person that sits and does the adjudication. Yes, sir?
Go back to the Trump and Biden race and decide, since both are marked, you just count one of them and not count the other one? Can you decide?
Let's see. Yep, sure can.
Wow.
I think I want to vote for Biden. Let's let Biden win this one.
Wow.
So what you
That easy.
proceeds, whatever.
So you...
But I decided this Al, he don't deserve no votes. Let's not let nobody vote for that. And complete. Okay. Man. Well, here's another one.
So if it's that simple, if it's that easy to just change any of these votes that you want, then why not?
The other thing that I've thought about is my friends who have come from communist countries, whether it's Cambodia, China, Vietnam, my friends who've come from totalitarian regimes in Venezuela and Cuba. These people came here because of what we have to offer in our country. If we, the last bastion of hope, are not going to have a commitment against communism and tyranny, we're going to be no better than what Joseph Stalin said. Remember, he said, we allow the people to cast the votes, but we decide who is elected.